Welcome back to Ladies of Another View. I'm back, and we're going to be joined by Dr. Bryan Thatcher. He's a retired physician, and he started, was it about 20 years ago, a medical supply ministry where he was getting medical supplies around the world. And we'll talk about that a little bit. First, I want to welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for coming. You and I have known each other for a while because I actually wrote your conversion story, included it in the Amazing Grace for the Catholic Heart book. And you have been busy all these years gathering medical supplies, getting them to poor countries around the world. What was that all about?
Well, I was a busy physician, and when I decided to change gears, my life was out of balance. I was extremely successful, but in a worldly sense, but miserable and unhappy and overworked, and felt like I was on a treadmill that I couldn't get off. And one thing led to the other, but make a long story short, doors started to open, and I began to use all my medical contacts to ship supplies, donated medical supplies from hospitals. People were dropping stuff off at my homes. I'd be doing radio interviews. And I remember years ago, I was doing a radio interview out of Cincinnati, and Catholic school heard me, and they sent me 800 pairs of shoes that we shipped to Peru, because in Peru, everyone can go to school, but the hooker is that you cannot go if you don't have shoes. So this school sent me 800 pairs, and the funny part was they didn't tie the shoes together. So I remember spending hours in my garage in this massive game of concentration, putting the shoes together. And, we shipped over 150 containers to countries in Africa, South America, Central America, Philippines, Cuba. And we were getting such incredible donations. I mean, it was just amazing. Boxes and boxes of cardiac stents, balloon catheters, and orthopedic supplies. And it just, it was hard work, but I loved it because I would hear stories. One time I visited Nigeria, and a young man came up to me and said, you saved my life. And I said, what are you talking about? And he goes, well, there were antibiotics on that shipment you sent to us, and I had typhoid fever. I was near death, and they gave me the antibiotics, and they worked, and I survived. So, you just never know the results of just small deeds of goodness. And I think that's kind of what we need to get back to, is just doing small deeds of goodness and getting out of ourselves and realizing that there's a lot of people in need. One thing I've been blessed with is being able to travel all over the world. I've been in the mountains in Peru and villages in Africa and things, and seen so much poverty. And, we just are called to do small things, and small things out of love, and be kind. And it's just been a great ride for me these last 25 plus years. So.
Can I ask, when you were first getting started like that the stories you were just telling, was this, this was pre-social media, it sounds like. How did the word get out that people started donating to you? Did you have a website, or how did that work?
We did not have a website, but until 5 or 6 years later, but it just word of mouth. And, when the good Lord wants things to happen, it'll happen. Obviously, social media and internet, and now I can email Sudan and get a reply back in 5 minutes. So it made it so much easier. But I honestly can't give you a good answer on that. Doors just began to open, and I just followed it through them. And, one thing after the other, I could go on for hours of incredible stories. But it was amazing.
So is there any particular story that does come to mind, like maybe one that just blew you away as far as how things fell into place?
Well, part of our work is, of course, shipping the supplies. Part of our work is spreading the love of God. And I was asked to go on a trip, kind of a spiritual mission or retreat to Arkansas 20 some years ago. And while I was there, there was a Catholic priest from Africa there, and he said, I'd like you to come to Ghana. I know our bishop would like to hear about your work. And I said, okay. So I took my 11-year-old son, and we were there for about 9 days. And for 8 days, nothing happened. And I was like, what am I doing here? You know, I was just twiddling my thumbs, it seemed like, and I was itching to figure out what I was supposed to be doing over there. And on the next to the last day we were leaving, one of the priests said to me, tell me about your work. And I explained it to him, and he looked at me just in shock and said, I've been praying about this for 2 years. He said, this is an answer to my prayers. And one thing led to the other. Our work took off there. But in addition, I helped him build a school for disabled children. We sent computers, and if you remember back in the early 90s, it was, I think, Windows, Microsoft 3 or something like that. They were so crude computers, people would drop them off at my office. I'd make sure they worked, and we'd ship them. And the first time we only sent like 5 computers, and months later, I got word that, man, this has really changed the lives of these people, because the people without any skills, you know, it's like in America, if you don't have skills, you're at a disadvantage. But they were teaching them basic keyboard skills of how to use a computer. And it was really, these people were able to go into the city, into the capital and things in Accra, and get a job. And stories like that, one after the other. And then they would send me pictures. We'd send bicycles Shriners had given me of for people who had crippled legs. They could bicycle with their arms. And in Ghana, where I was, there was polio, and the legs were all shriveled up like thin sticks. And so we sent these bikes, and the disabled kids were riding around with their arms and wheelchairs, and they were working at the trade school, learning trades. And I remember years ago, I had a picture of all these disabled children in wheelchairs and stuff, and I used to call them my wheelie kids. So just things like that, you know, run through your mind.
What I love about your story is you're telling this story and that story. Like, it was just how a few computers changed the lives of so many, how some bicycles changed people's lives. And you went to all these different countries, one person looking for what do they need, people started donating. And when you think about all the improvements in people's lives and how that probably just continued, that there was a domino effect, and then that improved somebody else's life, how one person did that, it really is remarkable.
Well, you know, even now, it's been 20 years ago, I went to Kenya to speak, and I was debating whether or not to go. My dad was having open heart surgery, and I said, you know, I think the Lord wants me to go. I just have to go. He'll take care of my dad. Well, I got a call like the day before I was flying home that Dad had arrested on the table, but they brought him back. And I'm going, oh my gosh. You know, I was heartbroken. But while I was there, I met a priest from Sudan, and we became friends. We communicated. And 5-7 years ago, I bought him a cell phone. He used to call me from the bushes, you know, and we're in contact still. And I'm sending him some funds to build a computer school for the girls. It's so bad in Sudan. We have no idea in this country how 90% of the people in the world live, really. We really don't. You know, we think we have it so bad, but if it's measured by your success and wealth in the world, it's one measurement of wealth is whether or not you're going to eat today. You know, my children have no idea. I mean, our pantry is always filled to the brim, but if you can eat today, that's a sign of wealth. So yeah, one person can make a difference.
Welcome back to Ladies of Another View. And I also want to welcome back Dr. Bryan Thatcher, who is a retired doctor, MD, and he has been sending aid and medical supplies, whatever they need, to third world countries for 25 years. Welcome back, Bryan.
Thank you.
And Ukraine has kind of dropped off the news, segments nowadays, but you've turned your attention to giving aid to Ukraine and Poland. Tell us what that's about.
Well, interestingly, about 20 years ago, I visited Ukraine, and it was probably of all the places I've traveled, for me, the most heartwarming in a sense, because I grew up in a small German area in Ohio, small farm town. And when I went to Ukraine, it was like going back in time 75 years, and I was seeing stuff that my grandpa used to talk about. Uh, like the people were sitting on wooden chairs milking the cows in these big metal containers that you only see in antique stores now. They had horse and drawn buggies with, they were throwing the straw on, very few cars. And the people were so kind to me, and they were just such hardworking farmers. You know, Ukraine is like the breadbasket of that area of the world, and they ship wheat, and it's very fertile ground. And my grandpa used to take bacon, cook it, and save the fat and the lard, and then melt it the next day and put it on his bread for a toast. And that was his butter. And that's what these people were doing, and the foods they were eating. And so I just loved the trip. And when the war broke out, the religious order that we're under, the Marians, began helping them out. And because of my experience in shipping, we began to ship containers and medical supplies through two big organizations, Project Cure, CURE.org, and the Oliver Hoffman Foundation. And, it's just amazing, just a small group. We've shipped to Ukraine 81 pallets of medical supplies, and 11 more pallets are on their way. And now, because of my experience with containers, we're working with these foundations to ship containers where you can get a lot of stuff. A container is 40 foot by 10 foot by 10 foot. And we've been trying to start now doing the containers. These people have nothing. I mean, we're getting reports because the Marian Fathers have 5 churches in Ukraine. And like in Kharkiv, a missile actually landed on the priest's residence house and didn't explode. So you get this big, missile sitting in their living room. And, but we're hearing reports, people are dying. It's not really a war because they're hitting pregnant women, little children, theaters, malls. It's just indiscriminate killing. And, we just wanted to send supplies to help the civilians, humanitarian relief and basic medical supplies. And again, God puts the people in our paths. I've been working for many, many years with a nurse, trying to help the medical profession better understand and how to be a more caring and kind healthcare professional. Marie Romagnano in Massachusetts was a former trauma nurse. So she's been kind of organizing and working with these organizations as to what to send. And it's amazing because I read recently a couple major shipments, like God bless the Red Cross for all they do, but they were going down the major roads, and apparently the Russians were taking all this stuff. And through contacts, we've been able to go at night and sneak the stuff into the front lines. And we're just trying to help people. It's indiscriminate shooting, and people are suffering. People are suffering immensely. And unfortunately, it has fallen out of the news a little bit. But, we hope to send in the next month 2 containers, 400 or 500 boxes of medical supplies each to, they didn't even have tourniquets, plus not in that, the medical tourniquets, which, are like a belt you can strap and stop the bleeding. People were bleeding out. We were getting terrible reports of what was going on over there, and still is. And it's just a small thing in a way, but, we're just trying to help people who are suffering and let them know that we do care. And the world is filled with that right now. So, we just need to step it up a little bit. But
so you're sending aid both to Ukraine and to Poland, because a lot of these people are pouring into Poland, right? And you're helping them to help the
2
Ukraine.
million refugees. If you look at the history of Ukraine, they've been blasted during the World War I and II, and now Russia invading again. But there's a lot of families that are in the eastern part of Ukraine that are Russian, and then there's Poland right next to it. And Poland's taken over 2 million refugees. And it's interesting, they're not going to, like you might think, refugee camps. The Poles are actually taking these people into their homes and living in there. When I visited Ukraine years ago, I visited a senior citizens facility, and I still have one of my favorite pictures, this old Ukrainian woman dressed up in Ukrainian garb. And I remember it so well. In that house of mercy that the priests had built there, well, that's serving now as a refugee center. And in addition to all these containers and pallets and stuff, we've shipped over, donated 300 beds that they've set up for additional refugees and things. And so it's a small bit, but it's really amazing that we've been able to get it through, and we're going to continue to try to get it through. And it's through the Marian Fathers at Marian.org in conjunction with our efforts with Project Cure and the Oliver Hoffman Foundation. And these contacts either just fell into our laps recently, or it's contacts that I made 20 years ago that I never thought I'd need again. And here we go. They popped up. So it's very interesting.
Are you able to track accurately what you ship and whether or not it actually all gets to where it's supposed to go versus, graphed by the military or anything like that?
No, that's the other beauty. That was kind of one of my cardinal rules of shipping all these 25 years of I don't ship it anywhere unless I know it's going to be able to get through and get to where it's needed. Of all the containers I've sent, I only had one that we had to give up and give it to the government. And I learned a lesson because I didn't have my ducks in order 20 years ago. And yeah, we are able to make sure it gets in, and it's not getting stolen by the Russians or anything like that, because we've got the contacts in Poland and at the Ukrainian border, then they have their contacts. So it's this close-knit family of really people. What we're doing is nothing really. It's the people in Poland and Ukraine that are saying, hey, we're not going to stand for this nonsense. And
so the priests then actually help organize the people to be the liaisons and do the work kind of
they're
thing?
really risking their lives trying to get the stuff to the lines. But see, they know all the back roads, and it's really an incredible thing what they're doing. And really, they're the heroes. But it's all done out of trying to help their fellow countrymen, and the Poles helping the Ukrainians.
So what's a Marian?
I'm sorry. Yeah, let me explain that. We work through the Marians, that's our word for the Marian Fathers. It's a religious order that started in Poland 300 years ago. And they have, churches in Ukraine. Their priests are there. And so they're all kind of working together to alleviate the suffering of the people.
And I want to point people to the divinemercy.org website if you want to learn more about this or if you want to donate. They have a lot of information up on their website, divinemercy.org. Because you're right, it has fallen out of the news cycle because we're on to the next thing, right? But the suffering continues on. And thank goodness that there's still people who haven't forgotten. My brother, who lives in Prague, did spend some time in Poland volunteering. So he said he has just the greatest respect for the people that are organizing all this because there's such great need. And you need a lot of people and manpower and supplies. So thank you for all the work that you're doing, Dr. Thatcher.
Well, we're hats off really to Project Cure at projectcure.org and the Oliver Hoffman, Hoffmann Foundation. They're also doing incredible work to help people all over the world. And they just don't ship to Ukraine. They're shipping to many, many, many countries, work with governments, and they're awesome.